So today we're going to cover some of the financial strategies that you might want to consider at different income levels, starting with key milestones of 75K, 150K, and 300K. My name is Aiden Boorstein. I'm a financial planner, and no matter where you fall in this range, by the end of this video, I want to give you some real strategies that you can put into place to help feel successful at each of these different levels. So let's start with 75K. This is just below the median household income in America, and it's an important stepping stone to building a strong financial future. At this level, you might want to focus on building a basic financial strategy, focusing on a major goal like retirement and investing. You can obviously plan for other goals too. For instance, if you're young and you're making 75K a year, you might be planning to purchase a home soon. Or if you just started a family, you might be wanting to plan for college. But since retirement is often one of the most important and expensive goals to plan for, you may want to make sure that you're already set up with that goal before planning for more goals. One of the ways to find out how much money you should be putting away for retirement, or if you are currently putting away enough, is by using a calculator. And just for the purpose of this video, I'll be using this retirement calculator on calculator.net. But there are plenty of others online too. So as you can see with this calculator, you can put in things like your age, life expectancy, income needed during retirement, inflation rates, as well as things like Social Security or pension income, and your future retirement savings. So what you're saving each year to fund your retirement goal. Now, this is just a gauge. This doesn't replace a full financial plan, but it does give you a gauge on where you're at now, if you're potentially saving enough for your retirement or if you're far off. In this scenario, it seems that we would be far off. So what you could do is you can adjust things like your future retirement savings. Let's say you save 20% of your income, and you can see when we adjust that, you're a lot closer to what you actually might need for retirement. So when it comes to saving and investing, a good rule of thumb would be to save somewhere around 10 to 20% of your gross income. Utilizing workplace retirement plans, especially if they have a match, could be a great start, but also consider opening some retirement accounts outside of your workplace. For example, Roth IRAs, especially when you're young, can provide a massive retirement benefit due to the fact that you will be able to take tax-free distributions once you reach retirement age, and they also aren't subject to RMDs. So RMDs, if you're unfamiliar, are required minimum distributions, which are minimum withdrawals that you're required to take from certain retirement accounts once you reach a certain age. Also, having traditional taxable brokerage accounts can be useful. Setting up a mixture of taxable, tax-deferred, and tax-free accounts can help provide some flexibility for your future. When it comes to investments, it can get pretty confusing. Many people online talk about just buying an index fund and holding, and while this can work, particularly when you're young, this can potentially become very volatile and may not be the best option if you're close to retirement. In order to prevent this type of volatility, it's usually a good idea to create an allocation between equities like the S&P and fixed income like individual bonds, annuities, or bond funds. For example, while you're young, you may pick an allocation like an 80-20 portfolio, which would mean 80% stocks and 20% bonds, which is typically more risky but can help provide higher returns. As you get closer to retirement age, you'll likely want to reduce risk and volatility, so you might shoot for a 50-50 portfolio, a 40-60, or a 20-80, which would include more fixed income and less stocks. A common solution to allocation worries is a target date fund. So if you aren't familiar with these funds pick a date as a target. So let's say you're looking to retire in 2050, you would go into a 2050 target date fund. And as we get closer and closer to that date, professional money managers automatically reallocate funds to be more conservative. You can also create your own allocation and monitor it, but I just wanted to throw this out there for anyone who wanted a more hands-off approach. Keep in mind that how you invest is really a function of your risk tolerance, returns that you're looking for, net worth, and other factors. Some other important things that you may want to focus on at this level is paying off any high interest debt. In June 2025, the average credit card balance per person in America was $6,492. The goal obviously would be to beat the average. So to put yourself in a strong financial position, let's make sure that you aren't carrying a balance on your credit card or taking on any buy now, pay later debt, which can come with a whole different set of financial problems. Also at this income level, having an emergency fund is a great idea. Build yourself an emergency fund to cover 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. And if you're not sure what your monthly expenses are, this is where building a budget is extremely helpful. Whether you write a budget down on paper or you use a budgeting app to help, building a budget and sticking to it helps you visualize where your money is going and if there are areas where you can save more money. Now let's move on to if you're making 150K. Even at this level and the 300K level, all the things that we talked about at the 75K level are still important. Think of those tips as building the strong foundation for your personal finances. At the 150K level, there are just a little bit more opportunities and nuances to consider. First, at the 150K level, you may want to look more closely at tracking your net worth. Because your income is in the upper 10% of household incomes in the US, you may have the opportunity to grow your net worth much higher than you ever would have thought. The reason that I wanted to put this topic at this income level, even though it could be helpful at all the other income levels, is because of lifestyle creep. Lifestyle creep is when people tend to spend up to what they're currently making. So in other words, as their income increases, so does their discretionary spending on things like clothes, food, travel, and gifts. If you start noticing that your net worth isn't growing significantly as your income grows, you may want to more closely track that budget that we talked about. Personally, I use a spreadsheet that looks something like this to track my net worth year to year. At least once a year, I take a look at the spreadsheet to see if I'm on track with where I was expected to be. If I am, that's great. If I'm not, where can I improve? Maybe you took on additional debt, maybe you didn't save as much as you needed, or maybe the market just had a bad year. But the point is that by paying attention to these numbers, it may help you make conscious decisions about how you manage your money. Also, at the income level of 150,000, you may want to start considering different investment opportunities. Whereas at the 75K level, you may have been more focused on just keeping it simple with index funds, ETFs, and mutual funds. At this higher level of income, investments like real estate become more of a possibility. Since you may have the ability and the extra cash flow that you didn't have at 75K a year, diversifying beyond stocks and bonds into other areas that you might be interested in, like real estate, now become a reality. But remember, there are different risks to different types of investments, so it's vital to fully understand any investment strategy that you take on. Another very important area worth focusing on at this level is insurance. While insurance is important at all levels of income, the more money you make, the more responsibility you likely have to keep making it. This is where life insurance and disability insurance can come into play. For example, if you're in your 30s or 40s with kids and your spouse is a stay-at-home mom, if you lose your job paying 150K a year, or worse, you die, you'll probably want to make sure that your spouse can make ends meet as long as possible. That means money to pay for the mortgage, car loans, school, and everyday expenses. Also, as your net worth increases, umbrella liability policies become more and more important. An umbrella liability policy covers you over what the normal liability limits are for your auto policy and homeowner's policy. So imagine this, you're hosting a barbecue and you invite your neighbors over, and the neighbor's kid trips over the hose and breaks their arm. And now they want to sue you for $1 million. If that is more than what your homeowner's policy would cover, which in many cases it may be, your umbrella policy kicks in. And the best part is that umbrella policies can be very inexpensive for millions in coverage. Now finally, let's talk about those of you making $300,000 or more. You are in the upper 5% of household incomes in the US, and making over 300K gives you more opportunities and more nuances to think about. First, estate planning can be very important at these levels. Although most of the country does not have to worry about avoiding the estate tax limit, you may have more goals and aspirations for your legacy at this level. For example, setting up trusts for how you would like your kids and grandkids to receive support, or charitable giving strategies like donor-advised funds. Or if you're nearing or above the estate tax limit, strategies to get you below that limit. Also, the last thing you want if you die and have a lot of money is your family fighting over who gets what because you never felt like getting the estate planning done. Take Prince, for example. When he died in 2016, he had no estate plan at all. This resulted in years of fighting within the family over who gets what, and there is still a lawsuit ongoing as of August 2025. At this level, investing can become more complex, but it may help to diversify investments for potential higher returns, tax incentives, estate planning, or safety. For example, you may now be considered an accredited investor. In order to qualify for this in 2025, you must have individual income over $200,000 or joint income of $300,000 or an individual or joint net worth of over $1 million. This can open you up to alternative investments like 1031 DSTs, opportunity zone funds, private equity, and more. You'll also likely be dealing with larger tax liability than at lower incomes. At this level, you want to think about not only ways to reduce your current tax liability, but also your future tax liability. For example, if you have a large portfolio in your IRA or 401k, those retirement accounts will be subject to RMDs eventually. Those RMDs can grow higher and higher each year, which could cost you tens of thousands of dollars in taxes each year. Strategies like Roth conversions could help with this problem. For example, if you have a large portfolio in tax-deferred assets like your IRA or 401k, you can do what's called a Roth conversion. The idea is complex, but basically the thought is that in the years prior to taking those RMDs while you're in a lower tax bracket, preferably, you convert funds from your IRA or 401k to your Roth. When you make the conversion, you're taxed on any gains that you had in that tax-deferred account, so you want to strategize how much you roll over in a given year. Like I said, the strategy is complex, so it may be worth discussing with a financial planner prior to implementing, but it's something that we've seen save some of our clients millions in total tax liability. If you want a deeper understanding of this strategy, feel free to check out our video on Roth conversions. Lastly, at this level of income, making $300K or more, your family dynamics and conversations regarding money may look different. Many families find it difficult to talk about money because it could be uncomfortable. But what's more uncomfortable is the fact that 70% of families lose their wealth by the second generation and 90% by the third. The reason for this is not due to poor investment choices or taxes, it's a lack of communication and preparation. Having conversations about the family's core values, the purpose of wealth, how to define success, and basic financial literacy can be great knowledge that lasts them a lifetime. Being organized and staying on top of your finances, especially when they get more complex at this level, can help you stay aligned with your goals while reducing stress and building confidence. However you approach it, whether that means keeping a detailed spreadsheet or working with a financial professional, the key is finding a structure that works for you.